Let me get this straight, America is not a democracy. It's a corporation in red, white, and blue wrapping paper. They tell you to vote, make your voice heard, while lobbyists are writing the bills and billionaires are funding both parties. And when you follow the money trail, it leads to the same rotting castle. 1. Most of the time, the winner of the presidential election isn't even who the majority voted for. 2. Corporate PAC flooded over $5 billion into the 2022 midterms alone. You think your $20 donation matters? Well, it doesn't, and you are an illusion of choice. The political parties don't hate each other, they need each other to survive. They perform for the cameras and then drink together afterwards. And you and I are the ones that are screaming into the void while they are eating steak in private clubs. This isn't the left versus the right anymore, this is the powerful versus the people. Every time I turn on the news, I feel like I'm watching a magician's trick, misdirection after misdirection. They want you to argue over gas stoves, gender policies, and book bans, while a handful of men are hoarding the wealth of nations. And let me hit you with the reality. The top 1% own more wealth than the bottom 90% combined. The minimum wage hasn't kept up with inflation in over 50 years, and 40% of Americans can't afford a $400 emergency. And yet these politicians have the audacity to talk about the economy as if it's booming.
Best economic development win streak in our lifetime. We've broken every record for private sector investment.
And the market for America is better.
And remember that economy when he first came in being pretty good.
Oh, so when the economy starts to grow and
You mean the stock market. You mean the fake numbers that Wall Street uses to trick poor people into thinking that the system is stable. But what do they feed us instead? Grind harder, get a second job, start a side hustle, but you don't need a side hustle, you need a living wage and a corporate tax justice. But the bitter pill. 1. Both parties are bought. The IRS audits the poor more than the rich, and the rich don't work harder. They rig the game, and we're pawns chasing rules that they don't even follow. And if you still believe that the American dream is real, you're wrong, because it's quite dead, and it wasn't made for all of us. It was made for them. They gave us the crumbs and told us to be proud of it. Now let's talk about silence, not the one that you hear, but the kind that you don't. The kind that creeps in when you ask too many questions, the kind that gets post-shadow banned, and journalists fired, platforms wiped clean with no explanation. They don't have to throw you in jail anymore, they just have to turn down the volume. That's America's new trick, censorship with a smile. Ask about election fraud, you are deplatformed. Talk about government overreach, you're labeled an extremist, and you criticize pharmaceutical deals, you are anti-science. We've built a digital world where the truth is algorithmically erased if you don't serve a narrative. Even if you whisper, big tech listens, and you better say what they want to hear. And listen, I'm not talking about conspiracy, I'm talking about control. If you cannot speak freely, therefore you are not free. And if the people you voted for are funded by the people you cannot criticize, you are in a decorated prison. And what's worse is that we accepted it. We made our cages beautiful, curated, filtered, and branded. We called it safety. We call it moderation. And you don't have to agree with me, but if you aren't allowed to ask the question, therefore you are not a citizen of democracy, but a subject to the machine. And let's talk about the factory, not the ones with smoke and machines, but the one with desks, bells, and hall passes and curriculum. The factory is called school, and from the moment that you are enrolled, you are trained, not informed, not educated, but trained like a dog to sit still, ask questions by raising your hands, don't question the lesson, memorize, recite, forget, repeat. You are not being taught how to think, you are being trained what to think, and more importantly, what not to think. We don't teach civics, we don't teach how to read a bill, organize a protest, or to question unjust systems. We teach submission to an outdated, sterilized version of history that's more propaganda than fact. They spend more time teaching you how to take a test than how to recognize when you are being lied to. But they are also chained, underpaid, overworked, silenced by policy, and forced to follow a script written by state boards. Here's the bitter pill. The system does not want you smart, it wants you useful, but only if you stay in line. Questioning is punished, conformity is rewarded. So while we parade around here saying that knowledge is power, the real power lies in the knowledge that you were given. America was built on racial division and it still runs on it. Racism isn't a bug in the system, it is the system. Slavery didn't end, it evolved from chains to prisons, from whips to policies, and from plantations to public housing ghettos, urban planning, and wage slavery. Look at the numbers. Black Americans make up to 13% of the population, but nearly 40% of the prison population. Black mothers are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth than white mothers. Majority black schools receive $23 billion less in funding annually than majority white schools. You think that this is a coincidence? No, this is a design. And yet they keep the narrative glued to the surface. We had a black president, racism is over, please. They hand out symbolic wins to distract from systematic rot. They love a black athlete, a black artist, a black icon, as long as they don't speak too loud, because the moment you speak, the moment you say, hey, maybe this is deeper than hashtags and hoodies, you are radical, you are dangerous, and you are disposable. Here is the bitter pill. They don't fear our anger, they fear our organization. They don't fear blackness, they fear the unity across color, class, and consciousness. Racism is not just hate, it's a strategy, a distraction, a wedge, and a weapon. And until America confronts this, not from apologies, but with action, redistribution, and reckoning, it will continue to rot from the inside out. Do you think that you're free because maybe you can buy a phone, post your opinions, like other opinions, and that sort of freedom is liberating? Well, wake up. Because you are in a psychological experiment. Yes, that is true. It began decades ago and has only gotten more sophisticated with every update. Social engineering is real, psychological warfare is real, and you are subject every single day. You are being studied. How long you scroll, what makes you click, what makes you afraid, and what makes you shut up. They don't just want your data, they want your mind, because once they shape how you perceive the world, they don't need a jail, you'll build the jail for them. If you really look at the statistics and data, mental illness is spiking, depression, anxiety, suicide, especially among the youth. And what do we get? We get wellness apps, we get Instagram therapy, meds, and more medicine. So why is no one asking, why is our society designed to break people and make us fail? Why do we live in a culture of hyper-productivity, zero rest, constant comparison, and fake connection? Why are we not built for joy but for output? Because if you're sad, tired, or disoriented, you're easier to sell to, easier to manipulate, and easier to divide. This is the bitter pill. You are not living, you are being harvested. And they're telling you that it's all in your head, but the sickness is in the system. History does not remember the obedient. It remembers the ones who asked the wrong questions and paid the price. See, the greatest threat to any corrupt system isn't violence, it's a thinking mind, a voice that dares to question what's real and what's normal and what we've all just silently accepted. Let's talk about the minds that they erased, the voices they buried, and the science they tried to scrub. Dr. Judy Mikovits, she was one of the top virologists in the country, discovered groundbreaking evidence that contaminated vaccines could be linked to chronic illnesses. What happened? Fired, blacklisted, arrested without a warrant. All her research was seized. You might not agree with her conclusions, but the question is, why did they silence her instead of debating her? Royal Rife built a microscope that supposedly saw living viruses before the electronic microscope was even invented. He claimed to cure cancer with frequency treatments, his lab was raided, his work vanished, and he died broke while pharma profits soared. Coincidence, or are there just no profits in cures and only in customers? Dr. Wilhelm Reich, a psychoanalyst, a scientist who claimed he discovered Ogon energy, a force he said was linked to weather, emotion, even life itself. The government burned his books, burned. His machines were destroyed. He was thrown into prison where he died. So why destroy ideas if they're only nonsense? Karen Silkwood, a nuclear plant worker who discovered deadly contamination and safe practices at her facility. She was bringing documents to a journalist where she died in a mysterious car crash. The documents were then gone. And let's talk about one of the wildest things that makes you wonder. The Mandela effect. Why do millions remember the Fruit of the Loom logo having a cornucopia? Why do people swear that Nelson Mandela died in prison years before he actually did? And why do people remember a world that doesn't match what we were told? Is it just faulty memory, or is there something deeper? Thank you guys for tuning in to the Freestyle Podcast. This was The Bitter Pill. It was inspired by a book called America's Bitter Pill. This isn't a sponsor, it's just a shout out because I appreciated it and it inspired me to create this piece. And if you guys had any sort of comments on what I had just discussed, I would appreciate if you guys comment that down below. I would love to read it and discuss with you guys different things that's going on and that's extremely compelling and intriguing in our world, and how our system is completely corrupt and yet it's being hid from us. Now, I will put down my Spotify account down below so you guys can check that out. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next Saturday and Tuesday. You guys have a wonderful day, and goodbye. Stuck inside of